The Nile. You know, for thousands of years, it's been the lifeblood of entire civilizations. But right now, this ancient river is at the very center of a modern conflict, one that could seriously push nations to the brink. So in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly why.
Okay, so to really get our heads around what's at stake here, you have to start with the sheer scale of this thing. We're talking about a river that stretches over 6,600 kilometers. I mean, to put that into perspective, that's like traveling from London all the way to New York. And then you'd still have some river left to go. It's just massive. And believe it or not, that size is a huge part of the problem.
And this really gets right to the heart of the issue. On one hand, you've got millions of people. We're talking families, farmers, for whom the Nile means everything. It's survival. But on the other hand, you've got entire nations with competing, clashing ambitions. So it's this crazy paradox, a lifeline and a battle line, all at the same time. All right, so first up, let's really dig into why this river is just so unbelievably essential. I mean, this isn't just about having a handy water source nearby. For at least one entire nation, it is literally about survival. Okay, just look at this number for Egypt. It's staggering. 95% of its fresh water comes from the Nile. Think about that for a second. That means pretty much every single drop of water for drinking, for farming, for industry, it all depends on this one river. It's really no wonder that about 95% of all Egyptians live packed into this tiny, narrow strip of land right along the river's banks. Why? Because the rest of the country is basically desert. And that incredible dependency, well, it explains this quote perfectly. For Egypt, the Nile isn't just some river. It's a matter of national security. So any change to its flow, any reduction, isn't just a diplomatic tiff. It's seen as a straight-up existential threat. Okay, so if Egypt sees the Nile as a fundamental issue of survival, then where does the conflict even come from? Let's get to the core of it. Who are the other players here, and what is it that they want? Now, this right here is a really important piece of the puzzle. Most of the Nile's water, a massive 85% of it, it doesn't even come from Egypt. It actually originates way upstream from a tributary called the Blue Nile, high up in the highlands of Ethiopia. So that begs a pretty big question, right? How is it that the country providing almost all the water has historically had the least amount of control over it? Well, the answer, as it often does, lies in history. See, way back in 1959, an agreement was signed that gave almost all the rights to the Nile's water to two countries, Egypt and Sudan. Ethiopia, the country that's the source of most of that water, was left out completely. I mean, can you imagine being told you can't use a resource that literally originates in your own backyard? It's pretty easy to see how that kind of deal set the stage for the conflict we see today. And that brings us to this fundamental clash of perspectives. On one side, you have Egypt, fighting to protect what it sees as its historic life-or-death water supply. On the other, you have Ethiopia, fighting for its right to use its own natural resources to, build a better future for its people. And the real tragedy here? Both arguments make perfect sense. And they are completely, totally at odds with each other. So this tension has been simmering for a long, long time. But recently, it's completely boiled over. And it's all because of one single, massive concrete project. And this is it, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD for short. For Ethiopia, this thing isn't just a dam, it's a national dream made real. It's set to be the largest hydroelectric project in all of Africa, and it has the potential to literally double the country's electricity output. We're talking about lifting millions of people out of poverty. So, that brings us to the central dilemma, doesn't it? How on earth do you balance these competing needs? How can one country's dream of development, Ethiopia's totally legitimate ambition, not become a downstream neighbor's nightmare? How does that dream not threaten Egypt's equally legitimate need for water just to survive? Okay, let's walk through Egypt's specific fear here, step by step. To generate all that power, the dam's absolutely enormous reservoir has to be filled with water. The key question, the one everything hinges on, is how fast. See, if Ethiopia fills it too quickly, it's kind of like putting a kink in a garden hose. The flow of water downstream to Egypt and Sudan could be drastically reduced, and that threatens everything from crops in the field to the water coming out of the tap. But, this isn't just a two-sided story between Egypt and Ethiopia. There's a third major nation caught right in the middle of all this, both physically and diplomatically. And that's Sudan. Their situation is, well, it's complicated.
On the one hand, the dam could be a total game changer for them. It could help control devastating annual floods and make their water supply much more regular. But, and this is a big but, they're also sitting right downstream of this massive structure. So while they see the potential benefits, they also share a lot of Egypt's fears about water shortages, especially during droughts. And on top of all that, they have a very real, very practical concern about the dam's safety.
This table really lays out why they're all just stuck. If you look at it, everyone's biggest fear is directly caused by another country's biggest goal. Egypt needs a stable, predictable water supply, which Ethiopia's plan to fill the dam threatens. Ethiopia needs energy and economic development, which means filling that dam. And that, of course, threatens Egypt's flow. And then there's Sudan, stuck in the middle, terrified of either side just deciding to act alone. It's a perfect diplomatic storm. And it's exactly why years and years of talks have gone absolutely nowhere.
And you know, as if this political deadlock wasn't enough, there are other powerful forces at play here, big external pressures that are set to make this situation even more dangerous.
You've basically got a two-pronged crisis brewing. First, you have climate change, which is making rainfall patterns and the river's flow way less predictable. And at the exact same time, the populations in all these countries are booming. So just think about it. You have way more people needing more and more water from a river that might actually have less water to give. It is a recipe for disaster.
So what's the ultimate takeaway here? I mean, what's this really all about? This conflict might look like it's about H2O, about physical water scarcity. But when you peel back the layers, it's really about politics, power, and control. The core question is, who gets to decide the future of the Nile? And the answer to that question is going to shape the future of this entire region for decades to come.
And that leaves us with one final critical question. The Nile has sustained life in this part of the world for millennia. The challenge now, the challenge for our time, is whether the nations that depend on it so completely can find a way to cooperate, to turn what's become a line of conflict back into a river of life, one that builds a shared and sustainable future for everyone.